With graphics like that, this guy must work out. Going, everyone? Still doing kind of a little video series on little tips. I don't have many more on this, but you'll see I've got several videos out on tips for handyman that are just starting out. Some things that I've learned the hard way over the years that I thought I'd try to share with y'all and see if can't prevent you from doing some of the dumb stuff I've done. So probably one of the biggest questions that I had starting out was pricing. And it's all going to depend on your area. I've seen other video logs that are on YouTube, and I wish I lived where they are to charge what they do for the services that they provide. But I'd literally get laughed out of the area to charge some of those prices. So it all depends on your area. I have a lot of rural areas that I cover where I'm at. I don't have a major metropolitan city anywhere near me. The largest city around me is about probably 200,000. So I'm not dealing with any large cities that are upwards of 1 million to 3 million people. More rural areas, smaller towns. So with that being the case, your area is going to be greatly determine what you can charge. So starting out, your hourly jobs are probably the toughest part. The rule of thumb I used for bid jobs, so for things that you're buying materials for, you're given a full estimate. The rule of thumb I used starting out was to double my materials. So if it's you can usually, even if you haven't done handyman work before, you can roughly figure out how many boards you need to put a deck on, for example, or how many boards and how much wood and material it's going to cost you to put a fence in. So you can come up with a rough estimate for what your materials are going to be, double that, and that's your estimate. So if you got $1,500 in materials, total bid's $3,000. That works for a lot of the things. When I first started out, the tough part was doing honey-do list and repairs, where you just came in and installed a ceiling fan, or replacing lights and switches and adjusting door latches. That was the stuff that took me a while to figure out how to charge for those jobs, and I've kind of got it figured out at this point. But it also depends on your overhead as well. So, you know, if you're just working for yourself and all you got for overhead is just your fees for gas in your vehicle, you do all your own accounting, then you don't have a lot of overhead. But if you've got monthly accounting fees that you've got to pay, or any kind of annual fees, a lot of states you've got to have a contractor's license, which isn't that much annually, at least not in my state. All those external expenses are overhead. You need to figure out how to work that cost into your job so it's not coming out of your back pocket. So it depends on the size of your business and your area, really. But once you figure out what your overhead is, you can kind of figure out what you need to charge per hour in order to stay profitable. And I would agree with a lot of other video logs I've seen about not really giving out an hourly rate. Do most everything as a bid. That's probably the safest bet, because then there's not a whole lot of questions about, you know, being surprised about what you charge per hour. Probably the best, most help I can give you is at least doubling your materials when you're first starting out. Will help you cover your, sorry about that, will help you cover at least not going broke out of the gate. And I've heard estimates where they triple the material cost. And there's some instances where that's the case, especially if you're dealing with a custom build, where you're working on a cabinet that you're having to put together by hand, and you're doing all the cutting yourself, the sanding, the finishing, the painting. In that case, you may only have $200 in materials, but you've got 48 hours or something ridiculous, and all the work that goes into cutting all of it, or figuring out exactly how you got to measure everything out, cutting all of it, driving to go get the materials, putting it all together, sanding it down, painting it, to get to that finished product. Those custom builds were hard to bid on. So maybe 4 or 5 times your materials on something like that. So it really depends on your area. Unfortunately, I can't give you a whole lot of pointers in that. You just kind of got to feel out your market and find out what's reasonable. And kind of the gauge I used is I've got some subs that I work for that work for me that are electricians and plumbers. Kind of figure out what their going rate is, and usually you'll find what their average hourly rate is. And I try to get just a little under what their going rate is. So now hopefully that helps. Sorry I can't get real specific because that all depends on your market. That's kind of what you got to use as your gauge. Appreciate it. Let me know if you got any questions. Thanks. This guy needs to be a poster child for birth control. If you like that video, hit subscribe.